Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be making a fun chevron tank top that looks almost like denim, but it is super lightweight and so soft to the touch. But before we begin, and if you're new to my channel, thanks for stopping by guys! I make fun and free modern crochet patterns and tutorials that is available for you here on my YouTube channel and on my blog. And if you haven't done so yet, don't forget to click that subscribe button below to get in on all the new patterns and tutorials. Now let's get started. For this pattern, I'm using two colors from Woolike Simili Lane, available in Michaels or at Amazon, in the color Denim Blue and Charcoal Gray. You'll also need a 2.5mm crochet hook, some stitch markers, a measuring tape, and a tapestry needle. To start off with the pattern, we'll take both our yarn colors and work up a slip knot. And with my 2.5mm hook, I'll start working double chains for a total of 112 chains. I'm working on a size medium, but I also have 9 other sizes available in the link below. Once you've completed all your chains, go ahead and place stitch markers on every 28th chain. Again, this only applies to size M. Now on your last chain, go ahead and work one more chain to start the next row. Next, you want to work on the second chain from your hook and work 2 half double crochet stitches. 1, 2. Then from here, you'll continue working half double crochet stitches all the way across until you've reached the second last stitch just before the next stitch marker. Once you've worked your way down to the first stitch marker, your next stitch will be a half double crochet 3 together, with the stitch marker being the middle stitch. So go ahead and remove that stitch marker and work your half double crochet 3 together. You will yarn over, insert your hook, drop a loop, and do this 2 more times until you have 7 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all loops. Then pick up your stitch marker and place your stitch marker back on the last stitch. Next, continue working half double crochet stitches on each chain all the way across until you've reached the next stitch marker. Once you've reached the second stitch marker, we'll work increases by working 3 half double crochet stitches on that stitch marker. So go ahead and remove the stitch marker and work 3 half double crochet stitches. Now go ahead and place the stitch marker back on that second stitch. Now continue working half double crochet stitches all the way until the second last stitch from the next stitch marker. Next, you'll work 3 half double crochet stitches on the next 3 stitches, making sure that the stitch marker is the second stitch. Yarn over, pull through all loops, and return the stitch marker on that last stitch that you just made. Now continue working half double crochet stitches on each chain all the way across. And on your last chain, go ahead and work 2 half double crochet stitches. Chain 1 and turn your work. So we'll basically be repeating what we did on the first row throughout the entire pattern. So let's do it again. We'll work 2 half double crochet on the first stitch, and we'll half double crochet all the way until the next stitch marker. Once you've reached that stitch marker, we'll work 3 half double crochet stitches, making sure that the stitch where the stitch marker is the second stitch that you're working on. Here's a tip that I like to share with you guys. So instead of placing a stitch marker at every section, you can also use this loop here, which is the loop holding the previous 3 half double crochet stitches together. It is slightly bigger than the other stitches, and use this as your first decrease stitch set. So whichever way you prefer, you can either use this tip or go ahead and place your stitch marker back on that last stitch that you just made. Now let's go ahead and half double crochet all the way until the next stitch marker. Once you've reached the second stitch marker, go ahead and place 3 half double crochet stitches on that stitch. Alternatively, you could also not use a stitch marker and consciously remember to count the stitches and to place a 3 half double crochet increase on that second group stitch. So if you like, go ahead and place a stitch marker back on the second stitch, or continue to half double crochet all the way across until you've reached the third stitch marker. So I've just reached the loop that carried the 3 half double crochet stitches from the previous row, and I know that this will be my first stitch that I'll be working on. So I'm going to remove my stitch marker, and on the biggest loop here, I'll work my half double crochet 3 together, and once that's done, you can go ahead and place a stitch marker on that last stitch that you just made, or continue working your half double crochet stitches all the way until the last stitch. On your last stitch, go ahead and work 2 half double crochet stitches to close up that row. We'll chain 1 to start the next row. From here, you'll already start to see the chevron shape beginning to form. With every decrease, the rows will pull inwards, forming a dip, and here you can see the next decrease stitch that we'll be working on, right here. And for every increase stitches, you'll see the stitches spread out, forming a peak, like so. And this is the second dip, with the loop right here being the first stitch we'll work on later on. And on the last stitch, we'll put an increase of 2 half double crochet stitches. Now this is the right side up of the top pattern. And because you know this pattern already, go ahead and work 6 more rows, and I'll meet you back here once we're there. So I've just completed a total of 8 rows. You can work any number of rows you like, but once you're done, go ahead and snip off the gray yarn. We won't be working with it anymore. On your next row, you'll chain 1, still with 2 loops on your hook. And because the double yarn is much bigger in gauge, we'll want to increase the next row just by a little bit. So here, instead of working the 2 double crochet increase, on our first stitch, we'll work 3. So we'll work 3 half double crochet increases on that first stitch while working around the gray yarn's tail. Then we'll work half double crochet stitches all the way down until you've reached the next stitch marker, or the last stitch just before working on the decrease stitches. My next stitch is a stitch carrying the 3 half double crochet stitches on the previous row. So I insert my hook here and work half double crochet 3 together stitches on the next 3 stitches. And then I'll continue working half double crochet stitches until I've reached the next stitch marker or the next increase stitches. On the next stitch, instead of working 3 half double crochet stitches, I'll work 5 half double crochet stitches instead to increase the width of this row. And if you're using a stitch marker, go ahead and place a stitch marker on that middle stitch that you just made, or the third stitch. and continue working half double crochet stitches all the way until the next stitch marker or the next decrease. Just like what we did on the other side, we'll work 3 half double crochets together. You can go ahead and place a stitch marker on that last stitch that you just made and half double crochet all the way across. On your last stitch, instead of working 2 half double crochet stitches, we'll work 3 half double crochet stitches to close up this row. We'll chain 1 and turn our work. Now, for the next row onwards, we'll work like what we did on the double yarn. We'll increase each side with 2 half double crochet stitches. We'll work 3 half double crochet stitches at the tip and another 2 half double crochet stitches at the end. We'll continue working the same pattern all the way until you've reached your desired length, or for size medium, I'll be working a total of 45 rows. So now go ahead and work on this pattern, and I'll meet you back here once we're all done. Once you've completed all your rows and you're happy with the length of your top, we'll close up the zigzag pattern by working back and forth rows on each side. Now from your last stitch, go ahead and insert your hook. Now for the first row, we'll skip that first stitch and work half double crochet 2 together on that second and third stitch. So go ahead and yarn over, insert your hook through that second stitch, drop a loop, yarn over, insert your hook through that third stitch, and pull through all loops. Now you'll work half double crochet stitches all the way until you've reached the next stitch marker or the decrease stitches. On the next stitch, we'll skip the middle stitch or the stitch carrying the previous 3 half double crochet stitches and treat it as a folding stitch. So we'll ignore that stitch. And in order to close up this row, we'll need to skip one more stitch and slip stitch onto the next stitch to close. And to start the next row back, we'll work 2 slip stitches up and turn our work. For the first stitch, you'll have to pull your work slightly and try to find that last stitch that you worked on the previous row. So this is the post and this is the first stitch. So go ahead and work at half double crochet stitch. And half double crochet all the way across until the 4th last stitch, and I'll meet you back here once we're there. Here I have my last 3 stitches left. Now we'll half double crochet the next 2 stitches together. So we'll do a decrease. We'll skip that last stitch, we'll chain 1 and turn our work. Now on the next row, we'll skip that first stitch and work a half double crochet 2 together on the second and third stitch, just like how we worked on the first row. Continue working half double crochet stitches all the way across until you've reached that last corner stitch. On that last stitch, make sure that you're working on that last stitch, the stitch after that last post that you worked on. This is very important. Now, we'll skip the next stitch and work a slip stitch on the following stitch to close this row. And in order to start the next row, we'll work 2 more slip stitches and we'll turn our work. Now we'll pull our work slightly to find the last stitch that we worked on the previous row and work a half double crochet stitch. Now we'll be repeating what we did on the previous rows until we do not have any more stitches remaining. Once you've completed all your stitches, it should look something like this, and it should end on the first stitch of the increased stitches or on the stitch just before the stitch marker. So instead of working on the corner like we did on this side, for the next section, we'll start working from the middle side, working our way up and down instead. So let's go ahead and find that folding stitch, or the stitch that has the 3 stitches together, and insert a hook on the second stitch above it. Now let's drop a loop, chain 1 to secure, and we'll work our first half double crochet stitch right after that folding stitch, or that 3rd stitch. Now you'll continue working half double crochet stitches along this row while carrying along that excess tail, and I'll meet you back here on the 4th last stitch. Here we have 3 stitches remaining. 1, 2, and I'll just show you. Let me just pull this 3rd stitch out here so you can see. So we have 3 stitches remaining. We'll work a half double crochet 2 together on that 1st and 2nd stitch. We'll skip that last stitch and we'll chain 1 and turn our work. So just like how we did on the previous side, we'll skip the 1st stitch and we'll work half double crochet stitches on the next 2 stitches. And we'll half double crochet all the way across. We'll repeat this pattern just like we did on the first side, and I'll meet you back here once we're done. Once you've completed all your stitches, your bottom panel should look something like this. It should be completely straight and you should not have any more stitches remaining. And once you've completed the bottom panel, go ahead and repeat the entire steps and make a second panel. So I've just completed my second panel and it should be exactly identical. Now place both panels on top of each other, wrong side facing out, and although both sides look very similar, you should be able to find the difference where the color change was made right here. Now turn your work to the side and let's get ready to seam the sides. You can either use a tapestry needle to sew the sides using whip stitches if you like, or you could use your crochet hook like how I'm doing right here. Insert your hook through that bottom stitch right at the end at the corner. Drop a loop, chain 1 to secure. Now you'll work single crochet stitches along this side while working evenly across each row on both panels. Remember not to stitch too tight, otherwise your stitches will pucker. And don't forget to carry along the excess tail while stitching along. Once you've reached the end of the row, just chain 1 to secure and bind off. Once done, the sides should look even all the way across. Now go ahead and seam up the other side. Once both sides are seamed up together, turn your work right side out, and your work should be something like this. Now let's work on the straps. Find the corner tip or the second stitch of the 3 half double crochet group stitches that you made earlier and use this as your middle point, and go 4 stitches down to start your foundation row. We will be using the double strand for the strap, so go ahead and pick up your gray and blue yarn. Drop a loop and chain 1 to secure. I will be working a total of 42 chains, which is about 10 inches when stretched or 25 centimeters when stretched. But go ahead and use this as a reference point to adjust to your size. Once you've completed all your chains, make sure you measure the final chain when stretched, making sure that it fits you properly. You'll find the middle point of the back panel and insert your hook on the 4th chain down. Work a slip stitch and another 2 more slip stitches up. We'll turn our work towards the chain row. We'll find that first chain and work a half double crochet stitch. Continue to work half double crochet stitches along this chain, and I'll meet you back here once we're at the end of this row. Once you've reached that last chain, we'll skip the next stitch and slip stitch onto the second stitch and work another 2 slip stitches up. Now we're starting the next row. You'll yarn over, insert your hook through that last stitch of the previous row, and half double crochet. We'll repeat this pattern for a total of 4 rows, or for as many or as little rows as you like, and I'll meet you back here once we're done. So I've just completed 4 rows, which is about 1¼ inch in width, or about 3 centimeters in width. But go ahead and adjust the width to your liking. Then go ahead and make your second strap. And once you're done, just bind off and weave in all loose ends. I chose not to do an edging at the bottom to give it a more t-shirt look. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and tag me if you've already made this top. I would love to have a look. If you like this video, please do give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so yet. I would love to see you back again. Bye for now.